20 minutes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Good morning here from Brazil. My name is Guilherme Couto. I'm from Federal University of Juiz de Fora, and I will present this work that I did with Noemi Monteiro, Bernardo Rocha, and Rodrigo dos Santos. So this is the agenda that I prepared for this presentation today. I will pass through the background of our work, the methods, the simulation, and some results we achieved. So let's move on first with the context and motivation. First of all, I brought this data here to reinforce the importance of studying the cardiovascular diseases. They are the leading cause of deaths worldwide. So, despite of all the technological development of the past years, we still have a huge number of deaths annually. So, it's very important for us to convoke other areas of studies like computer science, mathematical, biological, computational engineering for helping to change this scenario. Another interesting data is that of the US, specific for the US, is in 2020, each 35 4 seconds, a person died of cardiovascular diseases. So this is to show the importance of the time when we are talking about cardiovascular diseases. And here, our work has this goal of accelerating simulations because time is very important. And to move forward, our research, I will locate for you where it is. And this is a diagram that shows how the heart modeling usually works. So first, in the left, we have the patient. With some medical examinations, we can get some data of these patients. And this data, together with some mathematical, physical, biological information and knowledge, we can build a model of a heart, the computational model of a heart. And with this model, we can simulate not in the patient, but in the computational model. And this can improve our diagnosis, our therapies, and the prognostics too. So locating even further our research, it is focused here on the computational model. And I think we can expand even further this part in three in the sequence of three parts. First, everything starts with the mathematical model that when we implement, we get the computational model, and with the computational model, we can do simulations and get the results. Our research is located here at the simulation part, where we want to have more accurate results and we want to have more fast simulations. So is our goal. And now I'll explain what we are trying to simulate. And first of all, our heart, to pump blood for the rest of the body, it has to be stimulated. So the cardiac muscle has to contract in the specific way that the blood will be pumped out. And as you can see here in this GIF, the movement of the heart cannot be random. It has to follow a specific sequence, and the heart, the muscles to contract, they have to be stimulated by a electrical stimulus. The electrical stimulus, when it propagates through the tissue, the cardiac tissue, will generate this movement, and then the blood will pump it out. Here in this graph, you can see that when electrical stimulus goes through a cardiac cell, it generates an action potential that is represented here. In the y-axis here is the potential, electrical potential V, and in this side, we can see a representation of two-dimensional part of the cardiac tissue, where the blue, the darkest areas, represents the regions that were not stimulated yet, and the lighter regions, the yellow regions, represent the parts that were stimulated. So as you can see, the stimulus, when the heart is functioning normally, goes harmonic and with a specific cadence. So here's the function of a normal heart. However, if for different regions, sometimes you can have a premature contraction, and takes the this can break the rhythm of the heart and cause it we called arrhythmia. So the heart stop having that synchronic movement and start to vibrating, which generates in our two-dimensional representation. This is spiral, as you can see over here. This represents an arrhythmia, and this makes that the heart doesn't pump blood anymore, and it's a very serious situation. And this is what we are trying to simulate. Another metric, important metric for studying the arrhythmias, it's called the vulnerability window, and it indicates the time interval where this premature contraction, that is also called extrasystole, induces or not a cardiac arrhythmia. So as you can see here in the left side, if the premature contraction happens before this vulnerability window, it doesn't induce a arrhythmia. If it happens after the vulnerability window, it doesn't induce arrhythmia at all. But if the premature contraction happens during the vulnerability window, you have the spiral and then the arrhythmia representation. So it's a very important metric, and our work simulate this. So, okay, now you know what we are trying to simulate, and then let's describe mathematically what what is this. So first of all, we chose Fitzhugh-Nagumo equations to Fitzhugh-Nagumo model to represent the functioning of a cell, a cardiac cell, and we chose the monodomain equation to represent the electrical functioning of the tissue. And as you can see here, when we coupled the Fitzhugh-Nagumo equations to the monodomain equation, it's an adaptive Fitzhugh-Nagumo to represent more specifically the cardiac functioning of the cardiac cells functioning. And when coupled to the monodomain, we get this reaction diffusion system, where in this first variable that indicates the potential, we have this reaction part over here, and then this diffusion part over here, it's a PDE, in our case, for the two-dimensional tissue. And okay, this is our mathematical model, and this is what we are trying to will solve. And our numerical method is to solve this system. So let's move forward for the numerical method. First of all, we introduced this SSI ADI that comes from for second order semi-implicit, this SSI, and it's based on alternating directions implicit. How it's work? Okay, so we have this first part that we are at time n. I don't know if you can see here, but we 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 split the time step in two parts. In the first half, we have the diffusion implicitly calculated in one direction and explicitly calculated in the other. And the other half, we do the opposite. So it's implicit in one direction and explicit in the other. And this is how the alternating directions implicit works. Here we have the equations that describe what the image shows. So in the first half, we have the diffusion implicitly calculated on x-axis, for example, and explicitly calculated on y. And then the second half, implicitly calculated in y and explicitly calculated in x. This is for the diffusion of the potential. In our case, it's just two-dimensional. And another important part of our method is this predictions calculation. So we have two variables of the Fitzhugh-Nagumo model, and we explicitly calculate two predictions. These predictions will be used in the rest of the method. So we do the predictions for V and for W. This is not the potential in the next step. This will only be used to calculate the potential, and here the other variable W. So this is the two equations. That is the system of equations that we have to solve in each time step. So we are in time step n, and we want to go to time step n plus 1. And here, as you can see, we have the diffusion, the first half of the diffusion, the second half of the diffusion, and the reaction that is calculated from the predictions I showed previously. And these two equations are our like what we have to solve in each time step. When we rearrange those equations over here, we get something like this for the first half and the second half. And these two equations, when we can write them in the matrix form, and we get something like this. And maybe here is the great insight of this method, because this three-diagonal matrix here, we know a very efficiency way to solve them by the Thomas algorithm. So despite of the expensive iterations the method has. With this, we can parallelize it, and we did this, and we can solve it efficiently. So this is a great insight of this method. And now to talk more about the results and we got. First here, in this table, we analyzed the relative error and the execution time. The error, we analyze it comparing to a very small time step, like 0.005. So it's relative of this smaller step, and that is more accurate. And I would like to say that these lines without a number represents that the method got unstable and could not represent the arrhythmias that we were trying to simulate. So uh, for example, for Ford Euler here is a very well-known method, explicit method, and very widely used. And we are comparing our method with the Ford Euler. And as you can see, as we increase the time discretization, the Ford Euler is stopped, got unstable, and didn't represent the simulation we wanted. So I would like to, to highlight two analysis here. First, if we analyze only the execution time, the Ford Euler will outperform the SSI ADI. However, with when we saw the relative error here, we can see for the same time discretization of these times, we got those errors. So the Ford Euler got an error like more than 2 times the SSI ADI error. And this is the like we have to do the choose depending on your application, if you are interested only in time or you want to put the error into your analysis too. Those results I showed here in this table were for the already parallelized execution. We parallelized this code with OpenMP, so in CPU only. And here you can see the error growing for Ford Euler and getting like very small and more stable for the SSI ADI as we increase the time discretization here. And here are a table of the speedups we achieved in this method. The speedups are a very widely used metric to see if the code was good, parallelized or not. And we can get this metric by dividing the serial execution time for the parallelized one. And in the computer, we run the experiments. We had 6 threads, and those were the speedups we got. So we can got for the SSI ADI almost 4.6 times faster than execution with only 1 thread in the serial execution simulation. So it's a very good speed up. And here for the conclusions, first of all, we can see that the time discretization and choosing a good method is very important to represent the vulnerability of reentry and then studying arrhythmias and so on. And we can see that too, SSI ADI was more stable, accurate, and fast, depending on the application. For example, if your application has has to have a error smaller than 3.5%. Ford Euler takes like 0.639 seconds, while SSI ADI needs only half of this time, almost half of this time. However, if an application is more flexible and can get an error like up to 10%, Ford Euler will outperform SSI ADI, will be faster. And we already have to we until have to test this method with more complex cardiac cells models, such as Tentusher or another methods with more equations and more precise representations. And we want to extend this to 3D simulations and parallelize them with GPUs so we can do more realistic simulations. So that was the conclusions. This work is still in progress. And that is, thanks a lot. I would like to thank my university, my laboratory, and the council. And that is, I think I stop.